What's going on in this matter is the private parties advanced a bill of exchange to discharge their tax liabilities. But they appear to be on the payroll of a public company. And they keep getting paid by checks out of the banking account of that company every week. Now, the party that said they haven't closed their other public accounts is right on point. Look, before you can access the exemption, asset money to discharge liabilities, what must you first exhaust? Every one of the liabilities that your straw man possesses, which the straw man calls an asset. Is your payroll paycheck, it's a wage to the straw man, isn't it? Does it get paid in asset or liability funds? Liability. So the straw men have more public liabilities every week, and they want the taxing authorities to consume the exemption before all the liabilities have been discharged? I don't think so. And so they keep ignoring the bill of exchange, which is on the exemption. They never say that the bill of exchange is no good. They haven't said that once. They just ignore it. Until when? Until their forensic investigation determines that the straw man has no more what they call assets, which is really liabilities. It's like a thermometer, the old mercury kind. You can't jump from 32 degrees below to 110 degrees Fahrenheit above without first going through zero. You've got to exhaust the liabilities before the public will allow you to attach the exemption, which is the asset. So what they're doing is they're going to anyone in a forensic investigation saying, do you have any liabilities belonging to these debtors? Now, the company basically is headed up by the same people who are the debtors in the tax. And so when the state petitions the company, the officers of the company defer to the affidavits of negative averment of the defendants in the tax case saying we tendered something and it's never been applied to the count. But the Attorney General in the taxing department never applies it to the account. Why? They're still assuming and presuming there may be some liabilities out there that should be seized first. Now, if the people running the company were to do an affidavit that basically said, oh, those debtors no longer pull a wage from the company and we have no assets, i.e. liabilities, belonging to the debtors, what would happen to the order of garnishment? It's gone. The forensic investigation is over. But you see, the people that are running the company want to continue to draw a liability wage without losing it to the government, and at the same time pay their government liabilities with the exemption. They're like a two-headed man. They operate in equity and law, and it depends on It's all for their benefit. They're not consistent. They're double-minded. Do these parties have character and standing to use the execution of law procedures in the public proceedings? No. Now, my friend Nick, and I really appreciate his comments, and believe me, he's operating there in the background, not just for him and me, but for you too. He said, Smith, you're doing okay, but do not give any false assumptions and presumptions to these people that they can live and do whatever they want wherever they go. They cannot act like double-minded people and not be legal lunatics that are going to get injured by what they're doing. They can choose one course or the other in their life and be in perfect harmony with both the world of law and equity. But they cannot operate on both sides. To put it another way, who do you have to be in harmony with to get a remedy? The Creator and your brother. First honor me, the Creator, then honor your brother who I created. And with this is all the law, all the gospel, and all the remedy. You get standing in character by following the Father's law, not by reading the statutes and the remedies of man. You can technically follow the law offerings in every case and in every statute and CFR of man. But if your actions in the background are in dishonor to what your Father has created you to be and do, no matter what you appear to do under the rules, regulations, and laws of man, you will never prevail, and they will not let you prevail because they are agents for the Father in heaven. It's not their law that counts. It's the law of the Creator that counts. And they're operating as His agents. So because the rules, their rules, have a remedy on the side of law, does not mean that any standing gives you access to those correct rules, even when your standing is incorrect. If you have good standing, the rules allow them, the government, a provision to give you the remedy pursuant to the law. But if you are not in harmony with the law of God to begin with, you have no standing and character to go in and invoke the rules and provisions of law to get the remedy through those equity courts. Everything starts with standing, which is substance, which, to say it another way, is you've washed your hands at law and you've stood with your Maker and your brother in harmony. Does it not say in the New Testament that if you go before the altar and you have discovered that you have aught with your brother, you are to leave the altar and go resolve your differences with your brother before you come back to the altar? What is the court? Isn't that the altar? Aren't those black-robed judges the priest agents for the Father, operating the civil law system backwards because the church has not understood and followed the Creator's law? So the Creator brings His priesthood through those people that you don't believe are the priests, the ones that stand up in the judgment thrones as though they were the priests. So you have to understand that to go to those courts and get a remedy, you've got to be in honor with your brother and with the system before you go in for your court case. John.
Yeah, I have a
new paragraph.
Little something here that I picked up over the past week. Quote, character is the root of the tree, conduct the fruit it bears. And this is by E.M. Bounds, unquote. I have another little ditty here. When you are real, you can't be ugly, except to people who don't understand. This is Marjorie Williams, The Velveteen Rabbit. And one little other ditty that I think everybody will get a little bit of a charge out of. Success is kind of like wrestling a gorilla. You don't quit when you're tired. You quit when the gorilla's tired. And this is by Ron McCracken.
Thanks, John.
And there's some others I have here, too, if you want to read them.
There's a lot of good wisdom in there.
Yeah.
Okay, remember it starts with standing in character. Most people think it starts with remedies, and they just hop into the remedies hoping that it's going to come out okay. The remedies are the form, which is the public side. The standing in character is the substance, which is the private side. In equity, which is based upon form on the public side, it rests for a foundation in substance. That's where you have to start. That's where you're going to get your remedy. New paragraph. Caleb has already given me 2 signs so that I will announce that there is no meeting next Monday, being the Labor Day holiday weekend. The first sign was very small, and it was privately scratched on a piece of paper. And when I failed to respond to that private draft, he put it in all capital letters on a commercial document. And on the public side of equity, I felt maybe I'd better come down before there was going to be an execution of sorts against me. So everyone is put on notice. There is no meeting next week unless you want to be here and conduct your own. Have at it. But Caleb probably will not be here to tape you.
Is he here now?
Is Caleb here now? We're not sure. He appears to be here, but we never know.
That's right.
But the results of Caleb's recordings are generally better than the results of Tom Downs' recordings. So even when Tom Downs is here, we're not sure he's here. So Caleb's probably here if you get a recording next week. It's all evidence. You got it. Okay, how many people here, we'll put this in negative affirmative form, have not seen the movie Chicago? Oh, boy. Well, maybe we better go the other way then. How many have seen the movie Chicago? Well, there's all of 3 of us. That's the church. That's close enough. Chicago, 7 letters. C-H-I-C-A-G-O. C happens to be the center letter of the 7. 7 is a completion. C is the 3rd letter in the alphabet, and 3 stands for the church. And this is, in fact, backwards about the church. And if you've ever seen the previews or the titles for the movie Chicago, you will know that that center C is brought out publicly with big attention because it's always lit and it gleams a lot brighter than the rest of the letters in the title. I have had a couple of people that have actually emailed me or written me or talked to me that said they would like me to review the movie Chicago because they found it very interesting. Actually, the Chicago movie was the Academy Award winner from last year. if you're like my wife and you absolutely detest musicals, and she wouldn't be caught dead in a movie theater with a musical or in the same room with one playing on television, if you're of the same opinion, I beg you, please, just for the sake of having a little bit of fun for the evening and possibly learning something, just shackle yourself to the floor in front of the screen and watch it. You'll probably enjoy it. But then you have to have a very weird and warped sense of humor, like everybody accuses me of, in that they say I appreciate every movie and find good in every film, irregardless of what it is. And this movie may be no exception. Renee Zellweger plays the leading character in this movie called Roxy Hart. What have we just talked about today? The duality of law forms? What did we just hear in that name? Roxy Hart. Well, Roxy probably would envision connotations of burlesque, which is exactly about what this form of story and movie is all about. Frivolous, public side, risque. Heart, on the other side, would probably be substance. And in fact, we have the leading character, Roxy Hart, to which the question comes down, which way is our leading character going to go? One of the other key characters in this particular story is a woman named Velma Kelly. And Velma is played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, who I believe was up for an Academy Award for supporting. She may have actually made that. I can't remember who got the awards. She did. Plays a super part, as does Renee Zellweger. And then, of course, who could ever forget Billy Flynn, the attorney, played by Richard Gere, who sings and tap dances in this particular movie. You probably never assumed and presumed that Richard Gere would be an actor that would be singing frivolous songs with a smile on his face and tap dancing his way across the screen. But I really do believe that the person that really cracks me up in this movie and makes this movie big time is Queen Latifah, who plays the part of Matron Mama Morton. And Matron Mama Morton has the distinct job of being the warden that runs the Cook County Women's Prison. And believe me, I'd give her 15 standing ovations for just one or two of the songs she sings in this movie, let alone the rest of the character that she plays. There are other characters in this film, but those four really are the lead characters and the ones that we want to follow. Now, the story has a very simple plot. It involves a number of women who are in the Cook County Jail who have either been convicted of murder and are on death row awaiting execution, or have been charged with murder and are awaiting their trial. And, of course, our hero, Roxy Hart, has been the latest addition to the Cook County Jail because she has been arrested for shooting a dude named Freddie Casely, who was a furniture salesman. But at the time she shot him, she really didn't realize he was a furniture salesman. Why, he pretended to her to be an agent who could find her lucrative employment in the singing, dancing, entertainment, burlesque, jazz clubs of Chicago during the Prohibition. And of course, Roxy Hart envisioned herself of going up the ladder of stardom in the public singing, dancing, entertainment world and having a future with no bounds, totally unlimited. But she realized that to get a good place and a good amount of money for her work, she would have to have connections rather than talent. So consequently, she hooked herself up with whatever guy would come by and seem to indicate that he might be able to get her a job. Don't worry about the fact that Roxy Hart's married. That's just a side position that causes a little bit of problems from time to time when her husband comes home to the apartment at an inopportune time. It's just business, you're right. And so what happens is Roxy has been strung along by this Freddie guy for a number of times, and Roxy really thinks Freddie's going to introduce her to the right manager and break her into the big time. And one night, after a little affair in her and her husband's apartment before her husband came home from late shift, Freddie finally gets disgusted and tells Roxy she absolutely has no talent, but that doesn't make any difference because Freddie has no ability to hook her up with anyone anyway. And I've just been stringing you along, Roxy, because you're a pretty girl, and I wanted to go out with one. To which Roxy draws a pistol out of the chest of drawers and puts 3 bullets in Freddie and kills him dead. Now, she's perfectly happy with the concept of admitting she shot Freddie dead. Because, as she so eloquently tells Mama later when she's in prison, I don't believe I'm here, I should be here because I don't believe I committed a crime. Basically, Freddie had it coming to me because he is a liar and a thief. And so we have Roxy Hart, the latest addition to the women's jail in Cook County, with 6 other women who are there either being charged with murder or on death row. And the interesting aspect of all 6 of these murderesses are that none of them are guilty of murder, even though every one of them killed the man that they were charged with murder in killing. But there was always a legal reason why it wasn't murder, and they weren't criminals. Now, the neat part about the movie or the story Chicago is that they are literally describing the whole legal system to you. Absolutely to a heartbeat. And they are doing it with tongue-in-cheek, like the people that are describing the system to you are lunatics. Therefore, no one will listen to what they're saying. But it's within the context of a very highly entertaining Hollywood piece. There's lots of neat songs, lots of dancing, lots of choruses. Why, there's relationships going on between people, some that you think are pretty stupid, some that might be pretty nice. But basically, you got a bunch of wackos there that are up there entertaining you. How would you describe a vaudeville burlesque show if you had the opportunity to go observe one? Would you say, oh yeah, it was entertaining, but oh yeah, those people aren't real, they're all wackos, but I'd probably go back and be entertained by them again? Totally frivolous, but enjoyable. Enjoyable not because you believe it's real, but because it is so unreal. And that would be your opinion of what was going on there. Well, that's how they show you the legal system, made up of the judge, the prosecutor, and yep, even Billy Flynn, the best attorney for a defendant in the state of Illinois. And it's highly entertaining in everything they show you. They tell you that Chicago is a town of corruption, capital C. They tell you that this is a story about liars and murderers. Let me ask you a question. How many crosses were there at the Messiah's interment? 3? And other than the Messiah, who was doing a job of redeeming, who was represented on the other 2 crosses? A murderer and a thief? That's what this story is all about in Chicago. The other 2 crosses. There are 6 women charged with murder other than Roxy. That's 7. That's a completion. All 6 claim they're innocent. Velma Kelly, played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, she's in jail waiting trial and been there for over 3 months at the time Roxy goes in because she killed her sister and her own husband, who were just happened to have an affair one night in the hotel where they rented when they were between performances. So Velma Kelly just shot him, and then she shows up to her performance and goes on with a solo act and says, no problem, I don't need the rest of my act, I can do it myself. And she does a very good job until the police show up and arrest her and drag her off for having murdered her sister and her husband. So she's in jail. And now good old Roxy Hart is also arrested. And she's arrested for the death of this guy, Freddie, her boyfriend, the one who's supposed to get her a good job in commerce, and instead Freddie is a liar. And she says, Freddie entered our apartment, my husband's and my apartment, to burgle us. Burgle. A burglar, a stealer, a thief. And she shot him because he was a liar and there to burgle them. Let me ask you a question. What was he there to burgle? Her? In what respect? Huh? Affections? Look, isn't it obvious that Roxy and Freddie had basically agreed in a treaty that Roxy would give affection to Freddie, and Freddie would get a contact to get a good job of singing and dancing for Roxy. So this was just a simple contract of commercial intercourse, whereby Roxy carried out her consideration and Freddie burgled her consideration in return by not providing the consideration on the other side of the commercial contract. So Freddie is a thief, but also a liar because he admitted he never intended to carry out his contract. So what did Roxy actually do? She canceled the contract. Now, is that a crime? Not in a land in which there is no law other than failure to abide by your commercial agreements. Do you start to understand what the writers of the movie Chicago are trying to tell you? There is no law. They can't execute these women for murder. And the women said, we're not in violation of any crime. Everyone that got killed had it coming to them because they failed to perform under the contracts with us, and we just canceled the contracts in the immortal words of yada, yada, yada. What did our little hero say? They just violated the contract. They canceled the contract. I think that was adequate observation. Okay? So, what's going on is, remember, this is a musical. Now, what happens is, Roxy's husband is named Amos. And Amos is really, really, really trying to be the dutiful husband to Roxy Renee Zellweger. He's very naive. And he's at least 2 smokestacks shy of a factory. And he has no comprehension what's going on. But the one thing that you can give him is that in the background, Amos has honor and respect for his wife, and to a certain extent, within the limits of his intelligence, wants to try to be a proper and dutiful husband to his wife. His wife, on the other hand, Roxy, basically uses the husband as a foundation for stability, with the desire to go out with big eyes in commerce and try to do a lot better. And if that happens, and she can gain some stability someplace else and do better than Amos, it's obvious in a heartbeat she'll be gone. So she has no illusions about Amos, and she only uses Amos as a last resort to get her out of trouble when there's no other way. So Amos is a used man, whether he understands it or not. Now, when Roxy shot Freddie, she calls her husband home and says, "Oh, there's been a terrible thing happen. A burglar broke into the apartment and I shot him." And so she talks Amos into confessing to the police that it was Amos that shot the burglar to protect his wife. Because Roxy convinces Amos that there is absolutely no prosecutor and no court in the land that's going to charge Amos with the crime of shooting a burglar in the protection of his wife's honor. Oh, yeah. Can you already see where the authors are playing with the concept of what is substance And what is form with the characters here? Obvious substance to Roxy deals with commercial prospects for the good life. That's where the substance in Roxy's mind's going. The form in Roxy's mind is anything is a legitimate procedure to get to the end result, which is the substance of fame and wealth because I have talent and deserve it. So form is whatever goes and substance is whatever's in it for me. And so she convinces her husband to use the substance of protecting the honor of his wife to lie about the form of the happening, to convince the public law enforcement not to investigate this matter any further and to allow a death to occur by calling it justifiable homicide by a party that never committed the act being attributed to him because the procedure works the best benefit for Roxy and hopefully for her husband, and she feels if it's good for them, it's good for the state of Illinois too. Unfortunately, we have a detective who has decided that there must be substance in the investigation, and he takes Amos into the family living room and interrogates him and is able to quickly deceive Amos into being confused enough that Amos finally confesses that he lied in his confession, and that now, rather than seeing Roxy as the virtuous wife, the law enforcement officer has fully convinced Amos that she's the biggest slut in the neighborhood and that he'll be much better off being rid of this bitch because they're going to hang her after they're done trying her in the Cook County court system. And believe me, the songs and the lyrics that you're listening to as the song sings the chorus, Greek chorus in the background, and the characters are doing the spoken word in the foreground are just incredible. In the one story dealing with our hero, Freddie, Casey being the one that died, the husband is trying to stick up for his wife and tell the detective what a virtuous, great lady she is. And Roxy has this song chorus going back in the background that's talking about this funny honey of mine. She's just goo-goo all over this guy who is sticking up and praising her in front of the detective, and how nobody could question the acts of Amos having protected his wife who was sleeping and never even awoke, even when the burglar came into the room, until the gunshots went off, and that startled her awake. Well, as soon as it starts turning around, the chorus lyrics takes on a reverse tone, and she's singing about this scummy, crummy, dummy hubby of mine. So, okay, which is it? Is he the good guy or is he the bad guy? Well, again, we have dual offerings and everything. To Roxy, he was the good guy, when in substance he was lying. And he becomes the crummy, scummy hubby when he starts telling the truth about the deception that he had pulled now that he understands that she's not the good, innocent woman anymore. So all the way through the story of Chicago, you talk about a duality. It's there in every story in every proceedings. Amos accuses Roxy of being a double-crosser, i.e. dating Freddie, and a liar. And he says, "You told me he was a burglar." That was probably about the only true thing she really did say, even though he didn't understand the context. And then Roxy turns around and she accuses him of being an unfaithful husband. True, when they're married, weren't they one? Were they supposed to testify against each other? See, the thing about Chicago is you really keep expecting that we're going to have an ultimate hero. Where is your ultimate hero in burlesque? It's all Looney Tunes. It's all insanity. It all plays for entertainment. Keep looking for the hero. One never appears. Everyone falls short. Everyone is a sinner looking for redemption. There is probably only one hero in this story, and that hero appears for one phrase of about 7 words. You saw the movie. Would you take a guess as to who that hero is in the movie? Quickly, anyone come to mind? Queen Latifah? No. Billy, the lawyer. Richard Gere. Richard Gere comes out after the trial. And there is a question that's posed at him. And for 1 second, the question that's posed by Roxy to the lawyer is, "They didn't even take my picture." She won the case, sorry to spoil it for you, and she wanted fame and fortune by winning the case. And she didn't get it because in burlesque, the public is so fickle, they're on to the next entertainment. You're old hat. And she goes, "They didn't even take my picture." The courtroom is empty except for 2 men, Billy and Amos. And the most entertaining humor of the whole case is Billy, the lawyer, always refers to Amos as Andy. And he keeps going, "I'm not Andy, I'm Amos." The only time Billy called him by his name Amos is when he was on the witness chair as the witness for Billy. And he comes up and says, "Amos." And he goes, "He got his name, my name right." That's because Amos was going to be an adverse witness. So the lawyer had to honor him so that Billy would not be an adverse witness to his own wife and to Billy's client. But here is Billy in the courtroom, and she said, "They didn't even take my picture." To which Billy says to Roxy, "Well, Roxy," something like, "I hope that you get everything you want or got coming, and God bless Illinois." Because up till that time, nobody was interested in God at all in this film. And it was the lawyer that brought the reality for one split second into the whole story of Chicago. And you would have never expected that from Billy, having seen his character in the story. Now, one of the most interesting characters is Queen Latifah in her job as the matron Mama Morton. She was the warden of the women's prison, and she had a song in which she was introduced. And the introduction from her, just like she's coming out in a Broadway play, is, "And now I present the keeper of the keep, the Countess of the Clink, the mistress of Murderer's Row, matron Mama Morton." And out she comes. And she's got this little song